Thanks, Manu. So yeah, I think like the focus of today is like pretty much like have a look at like how you sort of like evaluate yourself from an AI point of view, like especially if you're going for AI interviews and what it looks like. So we do like sort of like do mock interviews, like a lot of training for folks who are going into interviews. Like last week, one of our students got a Google offer as a forward deployed engineer, as an applied engineer, so things like that. So we get like the latest updates. So like we try and look at like what sort of areas to focus on. So this is a way to like evaluate yourself. But if something sort of like interests you, feel free to ask questions. So it's like few slides are there, and then at the end we can have a chat as well. Um, all right. So when it comes to like this kind of interviews, like AI interviews have been like changing a lot in the last few, I would say, couple of years, because like Meta is doing interviews in a certain way, Google is doing it a certain way, but eventually everybody's trying to like evaluate like whom to hire, like how to hire the best. One of the like most prominent ways that people prepare for these interviews, like grinding through LeetCode. So LeetCode is a platform that sort of like helps engineers prepare for like these coding style interviews, and that's been the de facto to evaluate the coding skills. Like you sort of go through like a bunch of like patterns, like these are like evaluating your data structures and algorithms knowledge. And that's good. Still, you get tested on these, but it is not the only way that you need to prepare for. So just only preparing for lead code, it's not going to help you land an AI job. So that's something I tell, like, especially the newcomers, like if you are senior enough, you know this is not the case. But for like somebody who is like preparing for general software engineering interviews, you can't necessarily apply that knowledge here. And the idea is like to look at this from like different angles, like not just coding, but also understanding the type of ML and AI knowledge that you need to have, but also like the behavioral questions, etc. Because AI sort of a role is not, I would say, unidimensional. Like you're looking at talking to multiple people, understanding like customer requirements, and then going and implementing these in industry. So you have to have like different types of expertise. So I'm gonna break it down into like five sections, like for ease of to remember it easily. So you'll be looking at AI and ML fundamentals. So this is like one of the main areas, like looking at things like how transformer models work, how RAG architectures work, how to build multi-agent systems. I think like there's a lot of information around here, but I think like you want to have a foundation in ML to a certain extent, but I would say 70% of rest of the knowledge should be on AI and AI engineering and how do you build like this sophisticated like production grade application. So that's where you get like a lot of questions. And then you'll have coding for AI. So still you get lead code type questions, but also you might get like these data wrangling type questions, like using pandas, like using NumPy. You get these kind of questions. So it depends on the type of role that you're going for. I'll sort of like talk through some examples what this looks like. So it's always good to pick one language like Python or TypeScript. I would always recommend something like Python, like if you're doing machine learning, AI. So it's always like safe bet. So if you, let's say, pick Python, you can sort of like go down this like lead code route, plus understanding how to implement things like libraries like pandas, like how do you sort of use them. So you get questions around this, and I'll go into detail in a bit. And then obviously after the fundamentals, like you need to understand how do you build these AI engineering systems at scale. These are like so like the RAG systems, like it's like bread and butter right now, and like multi-agent systems, and how do you apply observability in these kind of systems? How do you actually verify if a system is working well, and how do you put like evals, and how do you like integrate things like LangFuse into the mix? So there's a bunch of things that like only people who put things in production would actually touch. Like you can't necessarily learn these things in a actual like by reading a book. So there are things that people that look for. And the fourth one is, I think, like it is a bit of an abstract topic, but like staying current, because like AI and ML like moving super fast. I think this is very personal, like how you sort of keep up with it. So I do like follow a bunch of people on Twitter, X, and then I read papers, and I also like subscribe to a few newsletters. So that's like one of the ways I sort of like be updated, and also teach a lot as well. So for me to teach certain topics, I need to be updated. So I read and learn all the time. But so depending on your sort of way of like absorbing information, you need to find a mechanism to like be up to date. I think like definitely need to be reading papers, but at the same time, following up on like like subscribing to like few newsletters gonna help. I'll recommend a few at the end, like that you can like keep up to date with. So that's like another area that you need to be really thorough. It's not necessarily for the interview per se, but I think like having that system in place is going to be quite helpful. The other one is like behavioral sense, like you're looking at like the general like behavioral interview that you'll get. This seems simple like on paper, but it's actually critical point in interviews that you get failed like super fast. Like I know like I'm coming from engineering background, like I had this sense before, like and but I've got like I failed this couple of times, like in my so I've passed the technical, but behavioral I failed. So like I had to like go back to my drawing board and actually work through that really hard, like to understand like how do you sort of answer these behavioral questions. Like so you need to be prepared well, not just like do certain things. So it's like a really important point. And if you like ace this really well, even if you have like a, I would say like above average score in other technical areas, you have a better chance like getting the job because like especially with AI roles, you're looking at talking to a lot of people, like dealing with multiple people. It's not the story where it's like just typing things away in a computer. So these are the things you need to remember, like from a dimensions point of view. And I'll give you some examples of what this looks like, and like talk through like each steps in the next few slides. Right. So generally, I would recommend like somebody who's starting fresh, like to have this kind of scoring mechanism, like 1 to 5, like one being like I would freeze, like when you get a question, and five being, I mean, yeah, I can like do live sort of like whiteboarding, and I can like sort of like be thorough with it. So those are like the five being the best, and one being like really bad on different topics. You need to like go through each sections and try to score yourself. So that will give you like an understanding on where you are at right now. So for AI ML fundamentals, like these are some of the questions you can look at. But these are not the only way. But I think like if you know enough, like any number of random questions should be, if you do it like multiple times, the standard deviation of your average score should be like very small. Like, so that's what you're looking at. So for example, the first question, I can explain bias variance with a concrete example. So if you're coming from ML background, you can do this relatively well. And like, can I walk through gradient descent algorithm? So which is like how the neural networks and transformers, like all the fundamentals work, and can you like actually implement it, and can you like talk about learning rates, etc. So that's one of the examples. And then I can explain how a transformer, sort of like the transformer attention tokens, like especially like if you can explain attention mechanism, like those kind of things, how the attention algorithm works. So like how confident are you on that? So sometimes you get actually, depending on the role and the level that you're applying for, get asked to like implement this by hand. So at least knowing transformers really well is like super critical. You don't need to necessarily know like different types of attention mechanism. At least the vanilla version should be sufficient. And then can you explain embeddings, like how does RAG work, how does multi-agent systems work? Can you like actually explain this in a simple term? So these are some of the questions that I want you guys to think about when you start like rating. I mean, obviously you don't have to do it right now, but like I'll send the slides and spend a bit of time sort of rating yourself on these questions. These are the fundamental questions that you're looking at. So if you get the average of it, if it is out of this, like if it is above 3, that's good. If it is below 3, there's an area that you need to focus on. Um, and the next thing is like coding for AI. So I mentioned like, so I haven't sort of mentioned LeetCode here, but still like LeetCode could be critical. I know like Google still asks for that. Like there are types of questions that they ask. It's not the traditional like the set that you're looking at, but you get like medium level, maybe sometimes hard level questions on specific types of question patterns like for ML roles. So still lead code is valid, but there are other things you need to like focus on, like can you implement like KNN, K-means algorithm from scratch, and without any reference, can you do that? Like, so I mean, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate on the syntax, but at least from algorithm point of view, can you do that? And then, so NumPy and pandas, can you actually like write things down to do certain like data manipulation? Like, can you like merge two data frames on a specific index? Can you do that? So when you get asked these questions, especially like if you need to like filter certain things, like how do you do that in a much more efficient way? So those things you can't necessarily study for. You actually need to do this and figure out like what is the most efficient way to like filter a data frame, things like that. And then could you make an LLM call? Could you like filter that output? Can you get like a structured output from an API call? Like, can you build an API? So those things get asked as well. Like, especially like if it is like a applied AI role, you're looking at like implementing certain things. Like the first two would be like pretty much focused to maybe a research engineer, that type of role. But especially the third one, and also the fourth one, can you do like debugging, etc., like working with the interior? Can you do that? So most of these are like focused on like this applied AI engineering role, which is also like another very similar role. It's called forward deployed engineer. Like in the AI space, you get these roles like you go and implement these AI solutions in the client's like workplace. So generally the process happens like you get like a problem, and it could be some sort of abstract problem, but you need to like use coding to solve that, and you're looking at using some of these algorithms to solve this, and then you get asked follow-up questions on how to improve efficiency, how do you like sort of make the code better, like syntax, etc. You get like follow-up questions to understand the depth of knowledge that you normally have. So this is the, I would say, the third pillar. um, and then, so this was the second pillar, and the third pillar is, I think this is the, I would say, one of the critical ones for the role, because you're looking at the actual AI engineering and LLM systems knowledge. So we spoke about the fundamentals, but this is where looking at things like RAG systems, like I can design a RAG system and I know how to evaluate this, like looking at the retrieval quality, looking at the generation quality. Overall, can you like define like what success looks like in a RAG system? So like the types of metrics you're looking at. So these questions can be asked like super fast. And then if you've been like asked like, okay, when to use RAG, when to use fine tuning, and when to use like sort of like just pure system prompts, like, so you're probably looking at like these comparisons like cost for training, the speed of change of data. You should be able to like defend your answers really well. So this comes about like especially in like case study interviews, like you are given like a problem that is relevant for a business. You need to like try and gather the requirements, and based on that you need to define and build like a really good AI engineering solution, like LLM based solution. And then you're looking at defining these kind of like picking these right architecture choices, but also defending that with the interior, so that you can actually stand your ground and build like a really robust system. And similarly, like you get like things, questions around evals. So evals is how you evaluate like non-deterministic systems. Like in the past, like you would have done like things like unit testing to check how a system works, integration testing, etc. But with LLMs like this, you get like this non-deterministic component because of AI, and you're looking at having another system to evaluate if the system that you build is actually meeting the criteria for success that you defined early on. So things like LLM as a judge, and even like code-based evaluations, you need to like understand these things in depth. So these things get scored high when you talk about these, even things like guardrails, right? And then fourth would be like, I can reason about an agent's failure modes. How do you add guardrails, and how do you like debate about cost and latency, especially when to pick models, like wait, like which model to pick, and how do you sort of like handle token pricing? All sorts of things is super critical, because like if you're looking at a problem, let's say to process uh, let's say some sort of invoice, and you're building some sort of API to sort of scan that and get the information from invoice. And if the number of invoices are like massive, you can't be sending everything to just like a single large model like Opus or Gemini 3.5, because like the cost would be quite high. So you need to have some sort of mechanism to break it down. Like I'll pick like a cheaper model to initially extract certain information. I might have some sort of a like a code-based solution, like a Python-based solution directly to extract certain things with OCR. And when those things fail, I'll move into something like a powerful model. So that kind of like reasoning is super critical. So I think like that's something I think like I would recommend like everybody should be comfortable defending. And the other pillar is like staying current. So I wouldn't necessarily like use this for like evaluate myself again interview, but like it's for like long-term development. Like you're looking at, okay, I read at least like one paper or deep technical post a month, and I can summarize it in like 3 sentences. Like not using AI, can you do it actually manually? Like still, it's a good practice to I mean, I sometimes do this, like I print the research paper, I mark it down, I read it, like so like give my brain a bit more exercise, rather than putting everything through Claude or ChatGPT to like get a summary of it, because sometimes you need to like put your sort of like brain through this like bit of pain to, like, so that you can actually learn these concepts, so that you stay current on these new topics. And also I can explain like recent result or model release to a non-expert, especially like when you work with like teams, you have to speak different languages. Like the analysts would have a different language, engineers would have a different language, like a manager, senior manager would have a different understanding of AI. So can you sort of explain the same thing at different sort of level of expertise? It's like super critical. I think like this is like a really good test, and you can sort of like um, test this with an AI model, and see like do back and forth to test if you can actually explain it in real way. And other things are like I can critique it, um, like like understand the weakness, etc. And so having this kind of like I would say mechanism to staying in current is like quite important, and like having this kind of like mechanism in play. And if you have like lower score, I think like you definitely need to figure out like how do you stay in current. So apart from this, I think like I would recommend following some key figures on like X, and also maybe LinkedIn. I'm not a huge fan of like LinkedIn, but X is quite good like for AI. You'll see like much more current information. LinkedIn is also fine, but there's like a 1 week delay of information. Like it's not very current. And then like another recommendation is which is let's see, the batch deep learning AI. So this is like deep learning AI is like newsletter. These guys are quite good. Doesn't send too many sort of articles, but when they send stuff, is it's quite important, like valuable things, and they summarize it really well. So I would recommend like maybe this one or like a couple of more other places would be helpful for you to like stay current, because these are not just research angles, but also like looking at this kind of like practical agents. So you have this information, and you can like consume this in like, I don't know, 10 minutes. So that's more than enough for you to have like a good understanding what's happening out there in the world. And I would recommend something like this. And the fifth one is like behavioral sense. You're looking at so this is like I'm also not the best with this. Like I also learn this with time, but like you can actually practice this. Like there's things called like the star method. Like when it comes to behavior interviews, I wouldn't necessarily ask people to like follow it just blindly, but have a sense of like what that actually means. So there are like topics around like showing ownership, conflict, etc. Like would you have like, I have like 3 to 4 stories showing ownership and conflict. If you have that, like okay, have a fleshed out like set of examples. So I had like Excel sheet, Google sheet with these examples written down like for different types of themes. I mean, I didn't memorize it, but I back of my head I can like bring out certain examples if somebody asks a certain question, because they're looking at not just coding abilities, but also your ability to like work with teams, handle conflict, and have ownership. So you need to like have preparation for the behavioral interview as well. Things like I can answer, tell me about a project in under 2 minutes. So you need to like have like a really good technical project, and also probably a non-technical angle as well, so that you can like explain really well to the interviewers. These things can go a long way. And I can if you can explain, I can describe a technical disagreement and how I handle it, because this is like a very common thing. You have to like Jeff Bezos has this like really interesting guideline here. Like you sort of like fight until you come to an agreement, like you figure out like what's the best way. But when the team agrees on something, you just like double down on that and go ahead and implement that. So but before you come to that point, you need to have like in-depth discussions with peers to figure out like how the best way to implement something. This is like quite critical, but you may not, the team may not agree on your viewpoint, and like you might agree on something else. Like okay, when that happens, like how do you sort of like handle that? Like would you be resentful? Like would you sort of implement that? So I think like that's a skill that people look for, right? Even like the last point, I can own a failure without blaming someone else, is like really, I would say, authentic examples that you can talk about. Like I have like plenty of examples like this, especially early in your career, you'll have like so many examples of these, like, I mean, deleting databases, like, I don't know, updating production databases, like really bad stories. But you need to be able to like own up to those issues, and how do you handle that afterwards, and what sort of things did you change in your behavior. So like, yeah, so like, we quite important to have like good stories to tell here. So this is something you can prepare beforehand. You shouldn't like go blindly to these interviews. So that's why um suggest like looking into like behavioral sense, and then having a lot of examples ready to answer these questions. um yeah, I think like the next is like go through each score that you for your each section, and then figure out like what is your like lowest pillar, and sort of like improving on that, like sort of like doubling down on that. So obviously, for us, like we do teach some of the courses in certain areas, like things like engineering, like so I think like I'll like show that in a bit. So how do you go about this thing? Obviously, you need to like address your weakest pillar. If you have issues with coding, if you have issues with AI engineering, you definitely need to like double down on that. So things like behavioral sense, like it's a bit more preparation rather than like, and the more work you do, you'll get more experience. And then like how do you like have a good story around it? And then like you can sort of ignore the last two, because like you shouldn't be focusing on a lot of things. Like one or two should be the focus. Yeah, I think this could be a plan that you can have, like if you're applying for like air roles, like so start with rebuilding you from your weakest pillar, work on that, and like do multiple reps until you get really better at it. So if it is like lead coding, like, yeah, find out the patterns that people look for. There are around like 20 to 25 patterns, like that's it. Like you don't need to do like thousands of questions. I know people do it, but doesn't make sense from an interview point of view. So you can like pick the patterns that are getting asked, and then like prepare for that, and then actually like building things, like, and putting stuff out there is a much better way of learning. Like if you can build a product and putting out there for users, and then getting actual feedback is like a really like a valuable way of like getting like sort of improving in your skills, rather than just like practicing on theory. And when you're comfortable with the skills, and when you have like the products built, you can go into like mock interview preparation, which is like you find a friend, or you find somebody who knows, like who's in industry, to do like a lot of mock interviews. Like for us, like people who go through our training, we do like when they have an interview, we do like 2 to 3 mock interviews, like at each stage, so that like they are prepared, and they know like not having just the knowledge, but also how do you prepare, and like how do you dress up to the interview, and how do you like time it, like all things matter, like because like it's first impression, like how you speak, like how you smile, all of these things matter, not just the technical side of things. Like for example, if you're sort of solving like a case study interview or a coding interview, like you need to think out loud, like explain what you're thinking, and sort of like spend a lot of time, like especially getting the requirements right. So there are certain things that it it sounds a bit non-intuitive if you haven't trained for mocks. So this is like really important point if you're preparing for interviews. And then week 4, you kind of like polish up your stories, and then like, yeah, just relax a bit, and then like go into the interviews. Yeah, I think like if you guys are interested, to like there's a course that we're teaching. You guys can check it out. We're teaching on AI engineering. We go to the fundamentals, etc. And then like there's 35% discount for anybody using the code as well. Like things like context engineering, evals, MCPs, like how do you build like multi-agent systems, everything's are covered. That is there. I would recommend checking that as well. But I want to like pause here and see if there are any specific questions. I saw a few questions are there. Um, yeah, I think no, I think like some comments. Amazing, cool. I think Ro had to drop off. Hey, Madhu, good to connect. But yeah, so I'll pause here, and if you guys have questions, more than happy to answer. If you guys are preparing for interviews or just in general upskilling, let me know. We can chat. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think like everybody's super confident. So like yeah, feel free to like reach out if there are any questions. You can reach out to me at aki@snapdrum.com. Um, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Let me see if I can. Madhu, yes, definitely like this recording will be there, but I'll also send the slides as well. So yeah, amazing. If there are no other questions, we could wrap it up, guys. Cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining in, guys. Like, highly enjoyed the time and also like, yeah, sticking through to the end. Like, I appreciate that. And do reach out if there are any questions. Thanks a lot for the time.
Thank you very much, guys.